I used to think the worst thing about being married was having to pretend I enjoyed my wife's cooking. Turns out I was thinking way too small. My name is Jake Morrison, 38, owns a successful construction company in Portland, Oregon, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had a pretty solid life. My wife Kenia and I had been married for 12 years. She worked as a marketing director for a tech startup downtown, made decent money, and we lived in a nice suburban house with a 2-car garage and a mortgage that didn't keep me awake at night. The problem started with Kenia's best friend, Jessica Chen. Jessica was one of those women who seemed to collect attention, like lint on a black sweater. Tall, blonde, always perfectly put together, married to a software engineer named David who made more money than God but had the personality of wet cardboard. She taught high school English and somehow managed to make even that sound glamorous when she talked about it. I'd known Jessica for about 8 years, ever since she and Kenia became friends at some wine tasting event. At first, she seemed harmless enough. A little too flirty for my taste, but Kenia always laughed it off when I mentioned it. "She's just naturally charming," Kenia would say. "Don't be so paranoid." But paranoid started feeling like preparation when I noticed the way Jessica looked at me during dinner parties, the way she'd find excuses to touch my arm when she laughed, the way she'd text me directly about group plans that somehow never materialized into actual group events. Kenia either didn't notice or didn't care. She was busy climbing the corporate ladder, working late most nights, traveling for conferences. Our conversations had become logistics meetings about who was picking up groceries and whose turn it was to call the plumber. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, bright as neon signs on a dark highway, but sometimes you're so focused on driving straight that you miss the warning signs until you're already in the ditch. The first real red flag came on a Tuesday night in September. I'd finished a job site inspection early and decided to surprise Kenia with takeout from her favorite Thai place. I pulled into our driveway around 7, expecting to find her just getting home from work. Instead, I found her car already there, along with Jessica's silver BMW. I walked through the front door, calling out hello, but got no response. The living room was empty, but I could hear voices upstairs. Quiet voices. The kind of quiet that makes you stop walking and start listening. I set the food on the kitchen counter and climbed the stairs, my work boots heavy on the hardwood. The voices were coming from our bedroom, and the door was cracked open just enough for me to see inside. Kenia and Jessica were sitting on the edge of our bed, heads close together, looking at something on Jessica's phone. They were giggling like teenagers, and there was something about the scene that felt wrong, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with friendship. "Jake?" Kenia's voice was sharp, surprised. They'd heard my footsteps. I pushed the door open wider. "Hey, brought dinner?" "Oh, that's sweet." Kenia's smile was too bright, too quick. Jess was just showing me some pictures from her weekend in Seattle. Jessica held up her phone, but the screen was already dark. "David and I went to this amazing little restaurant in Pike Place Market." I nodded, but something in my gut twisted. The way they'd been sitting, the way they'd jumped apart when they heard me coming up the stairs. It felt like I'd interrupted something, but I couldn't put my finger on what. I should get going," Jessica said, standing up and smoothing down her skirt. "David's making his famous pasta tonight." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "And by famous, I mean the only thing he knows how to cook." She kissed Kenia's cheek goodbye, which was normal. What wasn't normal was the way her hand lingered on Kenia's shoulder, or the look they exchanged as she headed for the door. "See you later, Jake," Jessica called over her shoulder. "Thanks for being such a good host." I hadn't done anything host-like, but I waved anyway. After she left, I asked Kenia what they'd been talking about. "Nothing important," she said, already heading downstairs. "Just girl stuff. You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was, and that was becoming a problem. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention. Jessica came over more often, usually when I was at work, but sometimes when I was home. She'd hug Kenia longer than necessary. She'd compliment Kenia's clothes, her hair, her perfume. She'd find reasons to be in our house, in our space, in our conversations, and Kenia ate it up. I'd catch them texting at all hours. Kenia would smile at her phone in ways she hadn't smiled at me in months. When I asked who she was talking to, it was always just Jess, with a tone that suggested I was being ridiculous for asking. The breaking point came on a Friday night in October. We were at a house party thrown by one of Kenia's coworkers, a guy named Tom who lived in a fancy condo downtown. The place was packed with Kenia's work friends, people I barely knew but tolerated for her sake. Jessica was there, of course, without David. "He's working late," she explained to anyone who asked, but she didn't seem particularly bothered by his absence. I spent most of the evening nursing a beer and making small talk with strangers while Kenia and Jessica held court in the living room, laughing and whispering like they were the only two people in the room. Around 11, someone suggested truth or dare. I know what you're thinking. Truth or dare at a party full of adults in their 30s and 40s sounds ridiculous, and you're right. But there was enough alcohol involved to make it seem like a good idea, and enough peer pressure to make saying no feel antisocial. We all gathered in a circle on Tom's expensive leather furniture. Kenia sat across from me, Jessica beside her. The game started innocently enough. Someone dared Tom to text his ex-wife. Someone else had to admit to their most embarrassing moment in high school. Then it was Jessica's turn. Truth or dare? Asked Michelle, one of Kenia's co-workers. Jessica smiled, the kind of smile that should have come with a warning label. Dare. Michelle giggled. I dare you to kiss the most attractive man in the room. The room went quiet. Everyone looked around, waiting to see what Jessica would do. I expected her to make a joke, or pick someone safe, or find a way to deflect. Instead, she stood up, walked across the circle, and kissed me. Not a peck on the cheek. Not a friendly, platonic kiss. A real kiss, lips to lips, that lasted long enough for everyone in the room to gasp and for my brain to register what was happening. When she pulled away, she was smiling. I was frozen. Kenia was furious. What the hell, Jess? Kenia's voice cut through the shocked silence like a knife. You could have picked truth. Jessica shrugged, still smiling. You're right. Truth would have been easier. So why didn't you? Jessica looked around the room, making sure she had everyone's attention. Then she looked directly at Kenia. Because the truth is, your husband has been sleeping with me behind your back. The room exploded. Someone dropped their drink. Someone else gasped. Tom's expensive sound system kept playing pop music like nothing had happened, creating a surreal soundtrack to the destruction of my marriage. I stared at Jessica, my mouth open. What the hell are you talking about? But Kenia's face told me everything I needed to know. Not confusion, not outrage, not the immediate denial I would have expected from an innocent spouse. Panic, pure, undiluted panic. That's not true, Kenia said, but her voice was shaky. Jake, tell them that's not true. I looked at my wife, the woman I'd been married to for 12 years, and realized I was looking at a stranger. Kenia, I said quietly, is it true? The party ended quickly after that. People made awkward excuses and scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Within 20 minutes, the condo was empty except for Tom, Kenia, Jessica, and me. Tom was cleaning up broken glass and pretending not to listen. Jessica was sitting on the couch like she was watching a movie, completely relaxed. Kenia was pacing by the windows, her face pale. We need to talk, I said to Kenia. At home. Jake, I can explain. At home. The drive back to our house was the longest 15 minutes of my life. Kenia kept trying to start conversations that I wasn't ready to have. I kept my eyes on the road and my mouth shut until we were in our own driveway. Inside, Kenia immediately went on the offensive. I can't believe Jessica did that, she said, throwing her purse on the kitchen counter. She's been acting so weird lately. I think she's having problems with David and she's taking it out on us. Us? Our marriage. She's jealous, Jake. She's always been jealous of what we have. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten breakfast that morning like everything was normal. So you're saying it's not true? Kenia hesitated, just for a second, but long enough. Of course it's not true. How can you even ask me that? Because you look guilty as hell. I look upset. My best friend just humiliated me in front of all my coworkers. She kissed my husband and then accused me of cheating. How am I supposed to look? It was a good argument. If I hadn't been watching her face, I might have bought it. Kenia, I'm going to ask you one more time. Have you been sleeping with Jessica? She sat down across from me, reached for my hands. Hers were shaking. Jake, I love you. I've only ever loved you. Jessica is lying, and I don't know why, but she's lying. I wanted to believe her. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of building a life together, 12 years of thinking I knew the woman sitting across from me. I wanted to believe her so badly it hurt, but I'd seen her face when Jessica made the accusation. I'd seen the panic, the calculation, the split second where she'd weighed her options before deciding to deny everything. I need some air, I said, standing up. Where are you going? For a drive. I need to think. Jake, please don't leave. We need to work this out. There's nothing to work out if you're telling the truth. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard Kenia calling my name, but I didn't stop. I drove around Portland for 2 hours, trying to make sense of what had happened. The kiss, the accusation, Kenia's reaction. The more I thought about it, the more pieces started falling into place. The late nights Kenia had been working. The weekend conferences that seemed to happen more and more frequently. The way she'd become distant, distracted. The way she'd light up when Jessica was around but barely looked at me anymore. And Jessica. Beautiful, charming Jessica who flirted with everyone but had always seemed particularly interested in getting close to my wife. When I got home, Kenia was waiting up for me. She'd changed into her pajamas and made coffee, like this was a normal evening and we were a normal couple having a normal conversation. "Feel better?" she asked. "Not really." She patted the couch beside her. "Come sit. Let's talk about this rationally." I sat, but not next to her. I took the chair across the room. "Okay," I said, "talk." Kenia took a deep breath. "I think Jessica is having some kind of breakdown. Her marriage to David has been rocky for months. She's been calling me constantly, wanting to hang out, wanting to talk. I think she's developed some kind of unhealthy attachment to our relationship." "Our relationship?" "Our friendship. Mine and hers. And maybe she's confused about her feelings." "Confused how?" Kenia looked uncomfortable. "I think she might have feelings for me that aren't appropriate." I stared at my wife. "Are you saying Jessica is in love with you?" "I'm saying she's confused and unhappy, and she's projecting that onto our friendship. And tonight, when she saw me getting upset about the kiss, she lashed out." It was plausible. It explained Jessica's behavior, the accusation, even Kenia's panic. But something still felt wrong. "Has she ever made a pass at you?" I asked. Kenia hesitated again. "There have been a few times when she's been overly affectionate, but I always shut it down. I made it clear that I'm married and I'm not interested in anything like that." "What kind of overly affectionate?" "Hugging too long, complimenting me too much. A few times she tried to hold my hand or touch my leg when we were talking, but I always pulled away." "Why didn't you tell me about this?" "Because I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I thought if I just kept setting boundaries, she'd get the message and back off." "But she didn't back off." "No, she didn't." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Kenia's explanation made sense, but my gut was still telling me there was more to the story. "I want you to stop seeing her," I said finally. "What?" "Jessica. I want you to stop hanging out with her, stop texting her, stop being friends with her." "Jake, that's not fair. She's my best friend. She kissed your husband and accused you of cheating with her, in front of all your coworkers. If she's really just confused and going through a hard time, then she needs professional help, not more access to our marriage." Kenia's face went through several emotions at once: anger, frustration, and something else I couldn't identify. "You can't tell me who I can and can't be friends with." "I'm not telling you. I'm asking you, as your husband. Please stop seeing Jessica." "And if I don't?" The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. I realized we'd reached one of those moments that define a marriage, the kind of moment where you find out what your relationship is really made of. "Then we have bigger problems than Jessica," I said. Kenia stared at me for a long time. Then she nodded. "Okay, I'll talk to her. I'll tell her we need some space." "Thank you." But even as she agreed, I could see the resistance in her eyes, and I knew this wasn't over. Kenia kept her promise, sort of. She stopped seeing Jessica in person, at least as far as I knew. But I noticed she was still on her phone constantly, and when I asked who she was texting, she'd say, "Work," or "My sister," or "Nobody important." I started paying closer attention to her patterns. Kenia had always been organized, methodical. She kept her work schedule on a shared calendar, always told me when she'd be late, always had explanations for her whereabouts. But over the past few months, there had been gaps. Last-minute client meetings that didn't show up on her calendar. Dinner with coworkers that she couldn't provide details about when I asked. Weekend conferences in cities that seemed too small to host the kind of marketing events she usually attended. 2 weeks after the party, I decided to do some investigating. I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Kenia used the same password for everything, our wedding anniversary followed by her initials. She'd been using variations of it for years, and despite my suggestions that she change it up for security reasons, she never did. While she was in the shower one morning, I checked her laptop. Her browser history was clean. Too clean. Kenia wasn't the type to regularly clear her browsing data unless she had something to hide. Her email was more revealing. Nothing obviously incriminating, but there were several messages from Jessica over the past 2 weeks. The subject lines were innocuous. "Thinking of you. Hope you're okay. We need to talk." I clicked on the most recent one. "Kenia, I know Jake asked you to stop talking to me, but we can't just pretend nothing happened. What we have is too important to throw away because of one mistake. I miss you. Call me when you can. Jay." My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the other messages. They were all similar. Jessica asking Kenia to call her, to meet her, to not let me control their friendship. Kenia's responses were shorter, more cautious. I need time to think. Jake is really upset. This is complicated. But she was responding. Despite promising me she'd cut contact, she was still talking to Jessica. I heard the shower turn off upstairs and quickly closed the laptop. When Kenia came down for breakfast, I acted normal, but inside, I was furious. That evening, I confronted her. You're still talking to Jessica. Kenia froze with her coffee cup halfway to her lips. What? I know you're still in contact with her. You promised me you'd stop. I told her we needed space. I didn't promise to never speak to her again. What did her email mean when she said, what we have is too important? Kenia's face went white. You read my emails? Answer the question. You had no right to go through my personal... Answer the question, Kenia. She set down her coffee cup and stared at me. For a moment, I thought she was going to tell me the truth, whatever the truth was. Instead, she went on the attack. I can't believe you violated my privacy like that. How long have you been spying on me? I'm not spying. I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on with my wife. What's going on is that you've become paranoid and controlling. You're reading my emails, telling me who I can be friends with, interrogating me about every text message. This isn't healthy, Jake. You know what's not healthy? Your best friend kissing me and then accusing you of sleeping with her. You know what else isn't healthy? You lying to me about staying in contact with her. I'm not lying. I told you I'd ask for space, and I did. But you're still talking to her. She's going through a difficult time. She's confused and hurt, and she needs support. She needs a therapist, not my wife. Kenia stood up abruptly. I'm going to bed. I can't have this conversation when you're being irrational. I'm being irrational. But she was already walking away. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time that night, trying to figure out my next move. Kenia was still lying to me, still in contact with Jessica, still acting like I was the problem. The next day, I called in sick to work and decided to do some real investigating. I drove to Jessica's house, a modern 2-story in the suburbs about 20 minutes from ours. Her husband David's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant he was at work. Jessica taught at the local high school, so she should have been at work too, but her silver BMW was parked in the garage. I sat in my truck across the street for about an hour, feeling like a creep but unable to leave. Around 10:30, another car pulled into Jessica's driveway, a car I recognized. Kenia's red Honda Civic. I watched as my wife got out of her car and walked to Jessica's front door. She didn't knock. She used a key. My wife had a key to Jessica's house. I sat there for 3 hours, waiting for Kenia to come out. When she finally did, around 2 in the afternoon, her hair was messed up and her clothes looked wrinkled. She and Jessica stood in the doorway talking for several minutes, and then Jessica kissed her goodbye. Not on the cheek, on the mouth. And Kenia kissed her back. I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. Everything made sense now. The late nights, the secret texts, the panic when Jessica made her accusation at the party. Jessica hadn't been lying. She'd been telling the truth. My wife was having an affair with her best friend. When Kenia got home that evening, she acted completely normal. She asked about my day, told me about a difficult client meeting she'd had, made dinner like nothing had happened. I played along, but inside I was planning. If Kenia wanted to lie to me, if she wanted to sneak around behind my back, and if she wanted to make me look like a paranoid fool, then fine. But I wasn't going to make it easy for her, and I sure as hell wasn't going to be the only one who ended up humiliated. I spent the next week gathering evidence, photos of Kenia's car and Jessica's driveway, screenshots of their email conversations, a detailed log of Kenia's work meetings that coincided with Jessica's free periods at school. I also did something else. I hired a private investigator. His name was Chen, no relation to Jessica despite the shared last name. He was a former cop who specialized in matrimonial cases, and he came highly recommended by my lawyer. I need proof, I told him during our first meeting. Documented proof of the affair. You sure you want to go down this road? Mike asked. Sometimes it's better to just confront your spouse and try to work things out. I already tried that. She's still lying. Mike nodded. Okay, give me a week. While Mike was doing his thing, I was doing mine. I started paying attention to Kenia's social circle, particularly the people from her office who'd been at Tom's party. I wanted to know how far the gossip had spread and whether anyone believed Jessica's accusation. The answer was pretty much everyone. I found this out when I ran into Michelle, the coworker who dared Jessica to kiss someone at a coffee shop downtown. Jake, she said, looking uncomfortable. How are you doing? I'm fine. How are you? Good, good. She fidgeted with her coffee cup. Listen, about the other night at Tom's party? Yeah? I'm really sorry about what happened. Jessica was way out of line. Which part? The kiss or the accusation? Michelle looked even more uncomfortable. Both, I guess. I mean, the kiss was inappropriate, but the other thing... She trailed off. You think she was telling the truth? I don't know what to think. It's not really my business. But her face said otherwise. Michelle thought Jessica had been telling the truth, and she wasn't the only one. I started hearing whispers, seeing looks. Kenia's coworkers were talking, and they weren't talking about how crazy Jessica was. They were talking about how the pieces fit together. Kenia's close friendship with Jessica, the way they acted around each other, the fact that Kenia had never denied the accusation as strongly as someone who was innocent should have. Kenia noticed it too. She started coming home from work stressed and angry, complaining about office gossip and people who had nothing better to do than spread rumors. Maybe you should look for a new job, I suggested one evening. Why should I have to change jobs because people are being immature? Because the alternative is dealing with this every day for the foreseeable future. Or Jessica could tell everyone she was lying. Is she lying? Kenia glared at me. We've been through this, Jake. Yes, she's lying. Then ask her to set the record straight. I'm not talking to Jessica anymore, remember? That's what you wanted. Oh, right, I forgot. But I hadn't forgotten, and I knew Kenia was still talking to Jessica because Mike had already confirmed it. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. Kenia was working late again, or at least that's what she'd told me. I was home alone, eating leftover pizza and watching a basketball game when my phone rang. It was Mike. I've got what you need, he said. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? What did you find? Let's just say your wife's been very busy and very sloppy. We met the next morning at a diner near my office. Mike handed me a manila envelope thick with photographs and documents. Your wife has been meeting Jessica Chen at various locations around the city for the past 3 weeks, he said. Hotels, restaurants, Jessica's house when her husband is at work. I've got photos, credit card records, even some video. I opened the envelope and immediately wished I hadn't. The photos were clear and unambiguous. Kenia and Jessica holding hands in a restaurant booth, kissing in the parking lot of a hotel, entering a hotel room together and not coming out for 3 hours. There's more, Mike said. I did some digging into their history. This isn't a new thing. Based on credit card records and social media posts, they've been involved for at least 8 months. 8 months. I thought about all the times Kenia had come home late, all the weekend conferences, all the times I'd felt like something was off but couldn't put my finger on what. What do you want to do with this? Mike asked. I looked at the photos again, at my wife kissing another woman, at 12 years of marriage reduced to evidence in a manila envelope. I want to confront them, I said, both of them, together. That could get messy. It's already messy. Mike nodded. When? Tonight. Kenia's supposed to be working late, which means she's probably with Jessica. I want to catch them together. You sure about this? Once you do this, there's no going back. I thought about Kenia lying to my face every day for 8 months. I thought about Jessica kissing me at the party and then making me look like a fool. I thought about all the people who now believed I was either a cheater or an idiot. I'm sure. That evening, I waited until Kenia texted me that she'd be home late. Then I drove to Jessica's house. Both cars were in the driveway. I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. Jessica answered, wearing a bathrobe. Her face went white when she saw me. Jake, what are you doing here? I came to talk to you and Kenia. Kenia's not here. Her car's in your driveway. Jessica glanced back toward the house, calculating. She just left. She must have gotten a ride. From who? I don't know. An Uber, maybe. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of Mike's photos. Jessica and Kenia kissing in this very doorway 2 days earlier. Try again, I said. Jessica stared at the photo, then at me. For a moment, I thought she was going to keep lying. Instead, she stepped aside. She's upstairs, she said quietly. I walked into the house I'd been to dozens of times for dinner parties and barbecues, but everything looked different now. The couch where Kenia and Jessica had probably spent countless hours together. The kitchen where they'd made breakfast after nights I'd thought my wife was at conferences. Kenia, I called up the stairs. Come down here, now. I heard movement upstairs, whispered voices, footsteps. A few minutes later, Kenia appeared at the top of the stairs, fully dressed but looking like she'd gotten ready in a hurry. Jake, what are you doing here? What am I doing here? What are you doing here? Kenia came down the stairs slowly, like she was walking to her execution. Jessica called me. She was upset about David, and I came over to talk. In your underwear? What? I held up another photo. Kenia in Jessica's bedroom, wearing only a bra and panties, kissing Jessica, who was completely naked. The silence that followed was deafening. Kenia stared at the photo, her face cycling through emotions. Shock, panic, anger, resignation. Where did you get that? Does it matter? You had me followed? You've been lying to me for 8 months. Jessica had been standing in the doorway, watching our exchange like a tennis match. Now she stepped forward. Jake, I know this looks bad, but... Shut up, I said, not taking my eyes off Kenia. I'm talking to my wife. Ex-wife, Kenia said quietly. What? Ex-wife. That's what I'll be after you divorce me for this. It was the first honest thing she'd said to me in months. Is that what you want? I asked. Kenia looked at Jessica, then back at me. I don't know what I want. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. Yes. For 8 months. Yes. While you were lying to my face every single day. Yes. I nodded, feeling strangely calm. Okay then. I turned to leave, but Jessica grabbed my arm. Jake, wait. Don't do anything crazy. I looked at her hand on my arm, then at her face. Crazy like what? Like, I don't know. Don't hurt anyone. I almost laughed. Hurt anyone? You think I'm going to hurt someone? I don't know what you're thinking. I'm thinking that my wife has been cheating on me for 8 months with her best friend, lying about it, and making me look like a paranoid idiot to everyone we know. I'm thinking that you kissed me at a party and then told everyone I was sleeping with you, which was apparently your twisted way of telling the truth while still making me look bad. I'm thinking that you're both manipulative liars who deserve each other. I pulled my arm free. But hurt you? No, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to do something much worse. What? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. I'm going to tell everyone the truth. I started with Tom, the guy who'd hosted the party where everything went sideways. He was Kenia's coworker, well-connected in their office, and exactly the kind of person who would spread information efficiently. I called him the next morning. Tom, it's Jake Morrison, Kenia's husband. Jake? Hey, how are you doing? I've been meaning to call you since the party. That was intense. That's actually why I'm calling. I wanted to clear something up. Oh? It turns out Jessica was telling the truth that night. Kenia has been having an affair, just not with me. Silence on the other end of the line. I'm sorry. What? Kenia has been sleeping with Jessica for 8 months. I have photos, credit card records, the whole thing. Jessica's accusation at the party was her way of telling the truth while still making me look bad. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I thought you should know since it happened at your party and since you work with Kenia. I figured people have been talking. They have been talking, but nobody thought... we all assumed that I was the one cheating? Yeah, I figured. That's why I wanted to set the record straight. I could hear Tom breathing heavily on the other end of the line. Jake, I'm really sorry. This is... Wow. It is what it is. I just wanted you to know the truth. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I'm fine. Just tired of being the villain in someone else's story. After I hung up with Tom, I called Michelle, the woman who'd suggested the dare that started everything. Michelle, it's Jake Morrison. Jake, hi, how are you holding up? Better now that I know the truth. I gave her the same information I'd given Tom, along with a few additional details about how long the affair had been going on and how Kenia had been lying about it. Oh my God, Michelle said when I finished. That explains so much. Like what? The way they acted around each other. Kenia always seemed different when Jessica was around. More alive. And Jessica was always finding excuses to touch Kenia or compliment her. We all noticed it, but we just thought they were really close friends. They were close, all right. Jake, I feel terrible. When Jessica said you were sleeping with her, I actually believed it for a minute. She's gorgeous, and you seemed so calm about the whole thing. I was in shock. I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do? Just make sure people know the truth. I'm tired of being the bad guy. By noon, I'd made 6 phone calls to people from Kenia's office. By the end of the day, I'd called everyone I could think of who'd been at the party or who worked with Kenia. I also did something else. I called Jessica's husband, David. David, this is Jake Morrison, Kenia's husband. We need to talk. David sounded confused. Okay, what about? Your wife and mine have been having an affair for 8 months. The silence that followed lasted so long I thought he'd hung up. David, you still there? Yeah, I'm here. Are you sure? I have photos. Photos of what? Of them together, in hotel rooms, in your house, in restaurants. I hired a private investigator. Another long silence. David, I knew something was wrong, he said finally. Jessica's been acting strange for months. Distant, always on her phone, working late. I thought maybe she was having an affair, but I thought it was with another teacher or something. Not another teacher, my wife. Jesus, what do we do now? I'm filing for divorce. You should probably do the same. Yeah, I probably should. I felt bad for David. He seemed like a decent guy who'd been blindsided by this whole thing, just like I had. But at least now he knew the truth. That evening, Kenia came home from work looking like she'd been through a war. Her face was pale, her eyes were red, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. We need to talk, she said. Now you want to talk? Everyone at work knows. Good. Good? Jake, my career is ruined. People are looking at me like I'm some kind of freak. You should have thought about that before you started sleeping with your best friend. Kenia sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had our last honest conversation months ago. I know you're angry, she said, and you have every right to be, but did you have to tell everyone? You mean like how Jessica told everyone at Tom's party? That's different. How is it different? She was trying to protect our relationship. She was scared and she panicked. I stared at my wife, amazed that she could still find ways to justify what had happened. Protect your relationship by accusing me of cheating? She thought if people believed you were the one having an affair with her, they wouldn't look too closely at what was really going on between us. So she threw me under the bus to protect herself. She was trying to protect both of us, by making me look like a cheater and a liar. Kenia didn't have an answer for that. I've filed for divorce, I said. I know, I got the papers today. Good, then we don't have much to talk about. Jake, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, but we can work through this. Work through what? 8 months of lies? You having an affair with your best friend? You making me look like an idiot to everyone we know? People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, Kenia. This was a choice. 8 months of choices. Every time you lied to me about working late, that was a choice. Every time you came home and pretended everything was normal, that was a choice. Every time you let me think I was paranoid for noticing something was wrong, that was a choice. Kenia started crying. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. And you kept hurting me over and over for 8 months. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. You knew you wanted Jessica. I didn't plan for this to happen. But it did happen, and instead of being honest about it, you lied. You made me feel crazy for suspecting something was wrong. You let Jessica kiss me and accuse me of cheating, and you said nothing. I was scared. Of what? Of losing everything. My marriage, my job, my friends, of people judging me. Well, congratulations. You lost all of that anyway. Kenia cried harder. What happens now? Now you figure out your life without me in it. What about Jessica? What about her? Are you going to ruin her life too? I looked at my wife, the woman I'd loved for 12 years, and felt nothing but contempt. I didn't ruin anyone's life, Kenia. You and Jessica did that all by yourselves. I just made sure people knew the truth. Kenia wiped her eyes. I should pack some things. Yeah, you should. She went upstairs, and I heard her moving around in our bedroom, packing clothes and personal items. When she came back down with 2 suitcases, she paused at the front door. I really did love you, Jake. Not enough. Where will you go? Jessica's, I guess. David kicked her out this morning. Of course he had. I felt another pang of sympathy for David, who was probably going through his own version of this conversation. I hope you'll be happy, I said, and I meant it. Not because I forgave her, but because I wanted this to be over. I hope you can forgive me someday. I hope I never have to see you again. Kenia flinched like I'd hit her, but she didn't argue. She walked out the door, and I heard her car start up and drive away. I sat in my empty house for a long time that night, thinking about the past 8 months and how different everything looked now that I knew the truth. All the signs I'd missed, all the lies I'd believed, all the times I'd second-guessed my own instincts. But mostly, I thought about how good it felt to finally be free. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Kenia got half of our assets, which was fine by me. I got the house, which was what I wanted. I also got something else, my reputation back. Everyone who'd heard Jessica's accusation at Tom's party now knew the real story. Kenia and Jessica were the talk of the town, and not in a good way. Kenia had to find a new job. Jessica was put on administrative leave from the high school pending an investigation into her moral conduct. David and I grabbed a beer one evening, two guys who'd been through the same thing and come out the other side. Any regrets? He asked. I thought about it. About the marriage ending? No. About how it ended? Maybe. I could have handled some things differently. Like what? I could have been less vindictive. I could have just filed for divorce quietly and moved on. But then everyone would still think you were the cheater. True. I'm glad you told people the truth, David said. I needed to know, and Jessica needed to face consequences for what she did. What's she doing now? Living with Kenia in some apartment downtown. I heard they're not doing great. Turns out having an affair is more exciting than actually being together. I wasn't surprised. Kenia and Jessica had been living in a fantasy for 8 months, sneaking around, having secret rendezvous, feeling like they were star-crossed lovers. Reality was probably a lot less romantic. What about you? I asked David. Any regrets? Just one. I wish I'd figured it out sooner. Why? Because I wasted 8 months trying to fix a marriage that was already over. I raised my beer. Here's to not wasting any more time. Amen to that. We drank to new beginnings, to second chances, to the truth finally coming out. And for the first time in months, I felt like everything was going to be okay. 6 months after that, I heard through the grapevine that Kenia and Jessica had broken up. Apparently the stress of losing their jobs, their reputations, and their previous lives had been too much for their relationship to handle. Kenia moved back to her hometown in California. Jessica stayed in Portland but kept a low profile. I never saw either of them again. I sold the house and bought a smaller place closer to my work. I started dating again, cautiously at first, then with more confidence as I realized that not everyone was going to lie to me and cheat on me. I met a woman named Lisa at a coffee shop downtown. She was a nurse, divorced, with 2 kids, and a good sense of humor. We took things slow, built trust gradually, and learned to be honest with each other about everything, even the difficult stuff. 2 years later, we got married in a small ceremony with just our families and a few close friends. No big party, no truth or dare, no drama. Just 2 people who'd been through hell and decided to try again with someone new. On our wedding night, Lisa asked me if I ever thought about Kenia and what might have happened if things had been different. Sometimes, I said, but not in the way you might think. What do you mean? I don't wonder if we could have worked things out. I wonder why it took me so long to see who she really was. And who was she really? Someone who was willing to lie to the person who loved her most in order to get what she wanted. Someone who was willing to let me look like a fool rather than face the consequences of her choices. Lisa nodded. I'm glad you figured it out. Me too. Are you happy now? I looked at my new wife, this woman who'd chosen to trust me with her heart despite her own painful history, and I realized that I was. Yeah, I said. I'm happy. And I was. Not because I'd gotten revenge on Kenia and Jessica, though that had felt good at the time. Not because I'd proven I was right to be suspicious, though that had been satisfying. I was happy because I'd learned to trust my instincts, to demand honesty from the people in my life, and to walk away from situations that weren't serving me. I was happy because I'd stopped being the victim in someone else's story and started being the hero in my own. And I was happy because I'd found someone who understood that love isn't just about passion and attraction and excitement. It's about respect and honesty and choosing each other every day, even when it's difficult. Kenia had taught me what love wasn't. Lisa was teaching me what it could be, and that was worth more than any revenge I could have imagined.